How plants use nutrients. So here we get into some real hard science. The basic methodology seems to be that they will take a sample of plant tissue, dry it out, grind it up, and then put it into a very sophisticated machine like this. The information that I'm about to present came from this article by Texas A&M. The first element is carbon, which constitutes 45% of the plant. It's used for making proteins, starches, and cellulose. It comes from CO2. The next item is oxygen, which is also 45% of the plant tissues. It is used to make structures and also used for energy production, and it comes from CO2. You've been hearing for years that CO2 is bad. Well, consider these facts. In the atmosphere, the concentration of CO2 is about 400 parts per million. In controlled agricultural environments, such as greenhouses and laboratories, they routinely push this level up to 1,200 parts per million. And some years in the past, because of submarines, the Navy did tests and found that 1,700 parts per million was the point at which it became toxic. Now, when they talk about lowering carbon, the main problem is that if you lower carbon, you are going to create a global famine, because CO2 is plant food. Okay, the next element is hydrogen. This is 6% of the plant. It's also used for protein, starches, and cellulose, and it comes from water. And here we see how carbon dioxide and water combine to make carbohydrates, which are an important food for humans. So here we see a carbon atom with a water molecule and a hydrogen atom. Connected here, here's oxygen, hydrogen, all through this, you see carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen being combined to make a carbohydrate. The next element is nitrogen. This is 1.75% of the plant mass. It is used in proteins and to make chlorophyll. And nitrogen has to be fixed by microorganisms in the ground, which means that if you don't have those organisms, your plant will suffer from a lack of nitrogen unless you feed it with a fertilizer. And here is what is done with nitrogen, in that it is combined basically with water, broken into its pieces to make amino acids. Amino acids are blended together through various steps in order to finally make a complex protein molecule. And there are many proteins in plants as well as in humans. The next item is potassium, which is 1.5% of the plant. It has many functions, including increasing the quality of fruit. And the amount of potassium in plants is 6 times that of phosphorus. And this takes us back to our previous discussion about optimizing NPK. And in that presentation, I talked about how commonly available flower foods have more phosphorus than nitrogen and potassium. And I talked about how the exact reverse of that may be necessary, with less phosphorus and more potassium and nitrogen. Next, we have calcium, which is 0.5% of the plant. It participates in enzyme activity and root activity. It's used to build cell walls, and it regulates the transport of other nutrients. And if you have a deficiency, it causes stunting in the plant. And now we come to phosphorus, which is only 0.25% of the plant. It is used for cell formation and protein synthesis, also fat and carbohydrate metabolism. And as I mentioned, this takes us back to my video about balancing NPK. And here we come to a use for potassium, in that it is used to form vitamin B6, which our bodies need as well as plants need. And here we have this wonderful little potassium molecule over here, still hooked to hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. The next item is magnesium, which is 0.2% of plant. It helps in the production of chlorophyll and in fat formation, and also participates in metabolism. Then we have sulfur, which is only 0.3% of the plant, but it is necessary for the bacteria that do nitrogen fixation. And it is also used with amino acids to make proteins. Sulfur is also present in many kinds of vitamins and is used in oils as well. And here we have vitamin B1, where we have a sulfur molecule here over on the side, and we still have nitrogen, hydrogen, a little bit of oxygen over here. So we see this over and over again, that plants and people are basically made up of carbon dioxide and water with some nitrogen mixed in. Many of the micronutrients and possibly trace minerals are used as enzymes. Enzymes are proteins that act as biological catalysts, and these are made by micronutrients in plants. I couldn't find out how many enzymes there are in plants. They probably have many, but I did find an estimate that humans have 75,000 enzymes in our body, and they are used to drive many, many processes. And this is a reason why I'm constantly talking about the need to have some kind of micronutrient supplement to go into your fertilizer, because a lot of things depend on that. And here is one good way to get it. I have looked at places like Lowe's and Home Depot for micronutrient supplements and not found any. And so this is what I use in my own hydroponic systems. You can get this at hydroponic shops, or you can get it at Amazon or Walmart. Chlorine is 0.1% of the plant. It's used in making chlorophyll, hence chlorine, chlorophyll, also for enzymes and cellular development. Iron is 0.01% and used in enzyme activity. You may have heard about anemia, right? Tired, poor blood. And so here's where iron comes in. If you're deficient in iron, you are probably having reduced enzyme activity in your body. Manganese, 0.005% of plant, very tiny amount, but used in enzyme activity and important in pigmentation. I will say that, when I started using some better fertilizers on my flowers, I felt like the colors had become much more vibrant, and that could probably be caused by manganese. Zinc, 0.002% of the plant, used in enzyme activity. They're again an important nutrient in our body with a need for about, I think, 30 milligrams per day. Boron, 0.0001% of plant, but used for enzyme activities. Copper, same amount, enzyme activities. Molybdenum, 0.00001% of plant, but is needed for enzyme activity and is also playing a role in nitrogen fixing in legumes. Here is another good article about plant nutrition on Wikipedia. And in my previous videos, I've talked about the need to use liquid seaweed or something like it because of the large number of trace minerals and micronutrients it has. Now, seaweed and also some of the other amendments like green sand and azomite have both good and bad things in them. They have iodine, which is good, and they also have cadmium, which is bad. Fortunately, plants are able to perform selective absorption of the nutrients they need and selective rejection of the nutrients that they don't need. So the plants kind of protect us. And I have a friend named Mark Marcotti, a doctor who is a functional neurologist. And what he says is that a plant can't get what it wants. It will take something else because the plant is trying to survive and normalize itself. So it may take a lead particle instead of some other mineral that it wants. Continuing with some discussion about human nutrition, one of the things that is in liquid seaweed and seaweed in general is selenium. But I came to find out that you cannot eat enough seaweed to get the amount of selenium you need, which is 200 micrograms per day. It turns out you can only get this from supplements. And even though it's a very tiny amount, it has a lot of impacts on our health. Getting enough selenium can reduce the impact or likelihood of Alzheimer's disease, cancer, stroke, and premature aging. I remember hearing years ago that in the southeastern part of the US, they had more cancer because there was a deficiency of selenium in their soil. And another benefit is reducing the potential of mental health issues, boosting the immune system, and reducing the impact of asthma. And asthma has become somewhat common these days, and nutrient deficiencies in the food that people ate probably accounts for some of this.